and Tim. Welcome to Watchbox and thanks for logging on. Today we have an esteemed guest and a friend of the house, Pierre Halimi, President, Journe for the Americas. Pierre, welcome.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, of course, the company is about 18 years old, but your relationship with Francois Paul goes back much farther. How do you get from that first meeting to here?
Well, when I met Francois Paul in 1987, I went to my first Basel fair, and it was I was a retailer in Palm Beach at that time, and my open to buy went out very quickly. But I was a good student, so I said I'm going to start, trying to learn more about the industry, and I start circling further and further away from like the center till I met a few guys that are weird and weird displays and weird attitude, and I was like mesmerized by one watch. And I was looking at it, and this short guy that came to me and said, "Pierre, sir, can I help you with anything?" He didn't know my name then. I say, "Yeah, but I'm sorry to ask you, why are you copying Corum?" And then he said all the bad language, excuse my French, but like MF and all this. I said, "It's not true. I did the watch for Corum." I said, "I'm sorry, Corum told me that they did this watch. That was the Golden Bridge, and that was Vincent Calabrese." All of a sudden, the whole thing, like the whole curtain, like fell apart and said, "Well, there's a whole other side." I was still naive at that time, thinking that everybody was making their own watches. I was young. I was not, from a genealogy of like watchmakers or jewelers. So I started hanging out with these guys, and Vincent introduced me to a few people, and he said, "Why don't you come to the dinner?" These guys are part of what we call the AHCI, which is the French acronym for Independent Horological Creators Academy. And I go to the dinner, and across from me is Philippe Dufour. For those that know Philippe, greatest watchmaker probably living. Then you have Frank Muller that was there. Then you have Francois Paul Journe, on my right. And I started talking to these guys, and they had passion. They were ready to redo the whole world. They weren't looking at bottom lines. They weren't looking at anything but, let's make the best watches. Let's be creative. And fortunately, especially at that time, and Francois Paul was one of the first ones to really complain about this, people in the watch industry were sucking the talent from these creators without recognizing the talent. So a guy like Vincent Calabrese became the ambassador for the Corum Golden Bridge 2 years ago.
Openly, only 2 years ago.
I mean, this is just unbelievable. It's interesting also to see that the first joint venture that Francois Paul did was with Harry Winston, called the Opus One. But the Opus One, and I salute Harry Winston about this, they salute the talent. Say, "Hey, we don't know how to do this, but this is Francois Paul that did this," and so on and so forth. All the guys that now we start knowing. It gives a chance to the small guy to emerge. To be independent then was extremely difficult. To be independent today is also very difficult, but for different reasons. So when I started, going every year to Paris, and Francois Paul's atelier was next to my parents' apartment, so we would hang out, and the guy would redo the whole world every time, and I was part of the adventure. So that's created like this bond between Francois Paul and I, and 30 years after, we are partners. We still argue because we're French, normal, it's part of the nature, but always trying to do what Francois Paul always wanted to do, make the best watches ever. That's his goal in life, and I'm here to assist him.
So now, you have been around not just since the inception of the company, but going back much farther than that. How did the idea start with Francois Paul? Did he come to you one day and say, "I'm going to do this, I'm putting my name on the dial, and we're going forward with a new brand, a new company, and it's going to be about my vision"? Did it gradually coalesce into an idea, or did it strike like lightning?
Francois Paul is not, he needs, time to nurture and digest his ideas. But I know that we have in our little conference room in Geneva, there's a paper napkin with drawings on this. And I don't know if he did this with me or with somebody else, but he used to do this quite a lot. And if you look at the drawings then, and I think it was 94, except one, we can talk about the one that hasn't been done, all the other ones, they've been done. So it was already in the making. Now the problem when you create your brand, you need a little bit of money. So it's not that easy. When I say a little bit, it's quite a lot.
Understatement, I would imagine.
So I knew it was coming. And then, if you want to know the inside story, just to show how small we are, and we were minuscule the way we were. So in '99, François Paul talks to me. He said, "So are you ready to help me out in the United States?" At that time, I was only in the United States. I said, "François Paul, I'm the only one, representing you. I'm you the one making the watches. So are you ready?" He said, "I'm ready." Okay. So what's your plan? Can you open 5 retailers, like the good ones? I said, "Sure, but why 5? Because I have 5 watches. Not 5 SKUs, not 5 models, whatever. He had actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 watches. And that was the beginning of the distribution, if you want, it's a big word for us, in the United States. And then more, obviously, a little bit bigger after, but not that much bigger.
No, not that much bigger at all. And in fact, for a couple of years now, you've done something that's rather extraordinary in the watch space, especially in the modern day. You've actually said you have more or less a cap on the number of watches being made. Somewhere around 900 is where you found that equilibrium. How did you decide on that number? And what does it mean that you're only ever going to have 900? How do you expand a brand, grow a brand, and develop a brand when you know there's a limit to how many watches you can ship?
I think it's a misconception. We didn't come up with a number and say, oh, 900 is the, like a lottery ticket, say, hey, that's 900, 902. The way François Paul designed the company, maybe I'm a little bit at length on this because it's really important to understand, and it's very different from the rest of the industry. And I work with a lot of people in industries. First, his goal is not to make money. That's not what drives him. And he says money is extremely important. Government's money, your money, anybody that's listening to this, it's extremely important. But to fuel the dream, the actual essence of the company is to make the best watches ever. That's what drives him. That changed the whole, quote, business plan. So in order to do this, unlike other watch companies, and I'm not saying this one way is right and one way is wrong, but the way we are is like we have our watchmakers assembling from A to Z. Most companies, and especially if you want to grow, you would have to do what we call separation of labor. So Tim, you're going to do that bridge, and you're going to be the foremost expert in the world on that bridge. But that's the only thing you're going to do for the next X amount of years. And I would do another part, and somebody would assemble and everything. So it's like a separation. François Paul being a watchmaker, and remember that FP Journe is the only company where the watchmaker is the president, is the founder. There's not another one like this. So everything is around his vision. So when you do this, then you have a certain amount of man hours. So if we only create, Chronomètre Souverain, which is one of our least complicated watch, not that simple, but least complicated, maybe we can make 1,500 watches a year. If we make only the Grand Sonnery, and if people in our ateliers were able to do this, right now there's only 2 besides François Paul that can actually work on them, but let's imagine all of them would be able to, maybe we make 30 a year. So it's basically the balance between 30 and 1,500. Maybe it's 32, maybe it's 1,600, but to give you a ballpark. And it just happens to be what it is at the end of the year because of people requesting more of this watch. Sometimes, like last year, we produced 744 mechanical watches. We have one with the Journe Quartz, it's a different department. And we're not counting the Grand Sonnery and Mille Repeater, it's like a handful, and it's just another department. But on mechanical watches, we produce 744. We don't know yet what 2017, what we call millésime, will be. For me, I think it's going to be lower. Okay. So it's not because we didn't perform whatever, but we had to do the Vagabondage 3. It's a brand new movement. And whenever you do a new movement, you have this learning curve that takes a long, long time. So your production output goes down. And then we're preparing for the new thing, the novelty for 2018. And that takes a long time also. So, but the beauty of not having constraint with partners or with a bank, or somebody tells you, I need a 10% return on my money, changes the whole paradigm. He does whatever he wants. François Paul is the first one to say, guys, I'm doing the watches that I, François Paul, like. And I'm super lucky that I have collectors that like what I do. But even if they would not like what I do, I will still do this because that's the only thing I know what to do. Don't ask me to do things that I don't know what to do. You don't ask a sculptor to do landscape painting. If it's not in his calling, he's not going to do it. Marketing companies will do this. Not François Paul. It changes the whole thing. There was even at the Babson College a collector, professor of marketing that did a case study on FP Journe, and he was telling his kids, listen guys, you're probably all here because you want to make money. Fine, there's nothing wrong with this. But you can have another vision of your life. And you're going to hear about this case study, and then you decide, this guy is doing what he loves. And what he loves is not money related. To this day, François Paul does not own an apartment. He does not own a car. He owns nothing. Every penny stays in the company. That's how we've been able to grow it. And if you look further, how is it possible that a company that makes 744, like all the way to 900 watches a year, how can we afford to have our own dial maker, our own case maker, our own machinery to do all the components in-house, or 95%, we don't do the crystals, we don't do the hands, obviously, the rest we do. And also have boutiques to represent him worldwide. How is that possible? In order to have this vertical integration, you would have to go to something so much bigger, like Richmond Group and Swatch Group. But we've been able to do this on our own, without a bank, without anyone. And the price of independence is steep, but that's François Paul.
And it comes down to the reinvestment. Like you said, there's not a cent to spare. Every cent that you have goes into the dial maker, the case maker, building facilities, bringing in specialized personnel. So it sounds really like the development of Montre Journe is threefold. The development of new watches that provide fulfillment to François Paul himself, development of new watches, the development of the company as an institution, not just in terms of a brand, but you rescued the Bibliothèque Jean-Claude Sabrier. You prevented that from being broken up. I know François Paul spoke to me about his ambition to sometime in the future create a master school for masters within the grounds of the company. And so it becomes almost like an institution of learning that gives back to watchmaking. And then finally, there's building the brand in the eyes of the collector. And that's the next topic I really want to discuss with you, because you have a brand that is effectively 18 years old, and we've already seen the development of something approaching a vintage collector market for watches that aren't even 2 decades old. So what does it mean that there's now a sort of sense of vintage FP Journe, the early watches bringing special interest, the low volume brass movements, the old 38mm cases, the Generation 1 tourbillon, of course, Generation 1 resonance and tourbillon watches. What does that mean, and what does it say about the brand that this exists so soon?
Well, so soon is 18 years. I mean, it's 18 years of hard labor, especially on François Paul's shoulders. But François Paul always respected the collectors. And then from the beginning, wherever we stopped the brass movement, therefore we didn't make another one after, not one. When we stopped what we call the yellow dials, that was the dial that we advertised, and all of a sudden, because the movement were 9 gold in rose gold and yellow gold, he didn't like the look of it, he stopped. But that's it. So there's no more. So. And I'm sure like people, your viewers know that it's easy to do limited edition. I change this hand, it's limited. For François Paul, it doesn't even exist. When he says it's new, it's not like the case is new or the packaging is new or the band is new. It's the whole thing is new. Obviously, the movement, because he's a watchmaker. He's not a case maker, he's not a dial maker, not him. So for him, it has to be this. So I think, and it's going to take some time because we don't have a big marketing budget. That's the problem of having 744 watches. Even if we had a lot of money, we're not going to be able to deliver. So, that's the issue that we have, if you want. But when we talk to collectors, and we say, well, this is who we are. And we don't put a lot of money in marketing. We put the money where it belongs, in the watches. And our goal is to do this, to make the best watches ever. And we respect the collector, meaning we do not reintroduce a look-alike right after. Example, Vagabondage 1. He made 69 movements plus number 00 for the company. So he produced 70, never used the movement again, ever. Which company is going to develop a movement to do so many pieces. Financially, it is stupid. On the financial term, if you're a banker, I'm a banker, we say, François Paul, that's stupid. So why are you doing it? Because I want to. That's the beauty when being independent and being your own boss and being the watchmaker, you can decide yourself what you want to do. I have other examples if you want.
Of course.
The Grand Sonnery. So the Grand Sonnery, he started working, we started like coming out with the prototype in 2005. We started showing in 2006. Took him like 10 years, 8 years actually of hard work and 10 patents on this. And on average, we can make, let's say, between 3 and 4 a year. So let's call it 3.5 or 7 every 2 years. That's the cruising speed. At that time when we introduced it, it was 650,000 Swiss. So you do the math, even at 4, you're talking about 2.6 million Swiss francs at retail. François Paul asked Frank, who was the best watchmaker at that time, still probably is, said, Frank, can you help me out and help me build these Grand Sonneries? First, Frank had hair like this at the beginning. He finished like that, white hair. That was so much work and so much, thinking. He turned white within like a year and a half. But this guy was able to do 40 tourbillons a year. And that time it was about 100,000 Swiss francs. So it's 4 million output on one side, 2.6 on the other one. Now, as a financier, you say, let's go with the 4 million. François Paul went with the 2.6. Why? Because he wants to.
So in a lot of ways, what collectors are buying into and what the neo-vintage scene is buying with the FP Journe watches, especially the early ones, is a very singular vision of watchmaking that's immediately identifiable with the man himself. It's not a committee product, it's not a product of a corporate board, it wasn't designed to meet a market niche, and maybe there's a purity of vision in that appeals to people, even if it's sometimes a little bit idiosyncratic. When you're getting a Resonance 1, you're getting the Resonance wristwatch, the first one ever made, designed by the man who envisioned the concept in wristwatch form. When you buy the original tourbillon, the tourbillon 1 discontinued in 2003, you're getting the very first wristwatch concept ever brought to market under his own name by FP Journe. And like you said, because a limited edition or a discontinued reference at FP Journe is permanently discontinued.
Absolutely.
There's
big difference.
That's
A
integrity.
big difference. Yeah, that's integrity. Absolutely. And that's what people that know François Paul know he has integrity. And the way to look at it is, you're asking an artist more than a businessman. I've seen this over and over where people say, I want my watch to be like this, like this, like this, like this. And we were talking about that time about the Grand Sonnery. And François Paul left the meeting. He said, look, if you want to do your watch, do it, put your name on it. It's my name on it. So if you have a good idea, I'm going to listen to it. If you don't have a good idea, I'm going to walk away. And he walked away from a 650,000 Swiss franc sale. Because that's integrity. I'm not going to do a fuchsia with polka dots, where other companies would say, how many you need, and that was, that it doesn't work this way. It can't even fathom that fact. It doesn't understand this thing.
So one fact that I've noticed about François Paul is that he respects tradition, but he doesn't have a stodgy view of it. He's done things that are avant-garde. Some of the styles of the watches have been very progressive, technologically. A tourbillon with a remontoir, he was the first ever to do that in a wristwatch. Resonance, he was the first ever to do that in a wristwatch. To offer all of his calibers in 18-karat rose gold, first to do that. He was able to do things that maybe purists would not have immediately thought of, like the Elegant for women and the Elegant 48 for men.
But it's important for him, yes.
So, considering he's not a strict traditionalist, is there anything a type of watch he would not do, a type of watch he just despises, or a philosophy of watchmaking he can never make his own?
Well, first, he always says, I'm not going to make a marketing watch. Okay. If the trend is orange, we're not going to do orange watches. If I want to do orange, I'm going to do orange. That's that simple with François Paul. There's another thing also that he would not do is what we call complications that do not work well together. Okay. A tourbillon and a chronograph, they fight. So if you have a tourbillon with a chronograph, it is not optimum. It might look good on paper because you have a double complication. It might look good visually. Mechanically, because it's not precise and you really fight the precision, He's not going to do it. And he's planning, it's a known fact that he's planning a multi-complication that's going to be launched whenever it's ready. And the reason why he's doing this, because a lot of people say, well, you can't make a multi-complication. And François said, first, I did this in my past, if you look at the history before even the company got created, but also I'd rather dedicate all my energy to one complication and do it the best possible. But to basically shut you up, I'm going to make a multi-complication, but that's not going to be like a brick, and where you're not going to have conflicting complications, because that doesn't make sense. If it's not logical, he's not going to do it. Our best collectors and friends are basically usually two kinds, doctors and engineers, because they have the same vision of life. An engineer, there's a problem, what's the solution? You go to a doctor, you have a pain in your shoulder, the doctor has to figure your gears, say, what created that pain? How can I solve this? François Paul is always problem solution, problem solution, problem solution. And bring another solution to something that hasn't been done before. If it's done before, why even do it? There's no point. And really push the envelope. We can talk about silicone or silicium, however you want to say it.
Absolutely.
He did some surveys. I said, it's the great question. It's the wrong answer. The problem that you have with the silicium parts, silicium is basically a piece of glass, but like, paper thin. So, chances that a burst broke it. A shock would do this. If you overhaul it and you open it, chances you're going to break it. So it's not a problem today because everybody has parts. But what about in 10 years, in 15 years, in 50 years, in 100 years? François Paul looks down the road. He said, any of my watches, if you have all the plans, you can fix 200 years from now. But that's his history. He was fixing, or restoring, not even fixing, sorry, restoring 18th century clocks, which was the golden era of clockmaking. That's Breguet, that's Berthoud, that's Janvier, this caliber of people. So that's the whole difference. But he still looked for it, he still did some research. It's not possible.
No, but so it comes back to that concept of integrity. He will not build a watch that is not enduring and durable. He won't build a disposable product.
Disposable is the right word, yeah.
He won't repeat himself. He doesn't like to retrace his past works. That's why watches discontinued don't come back. And I know that he's often said that two of his primary goals are to keep his watches thin and keep his watches precise, because he does have a purist's view of the watch as a timekeeper, and this is still very important to him. So that's kind of his guiding philosophy. And I get the sense that you don't know what he'll make next or won't make next until you see it, because that's the factor, that's the imagination coming into play.
Well, you have like a straight line going towards accuracy. The optimum, if it's called the optimum, there's a reason why it's called the optimum. And it's basically the tourbillon with remontant d'égalité, but without the tourbillon. And to gain, a half a second or a quarter of a second precision in mechanical watch, it's exponentially more difficult. It's not linear. So his goal, he says, my goal is to make a mechanical watch as accurate as quartz. I know the issues, the spring, the lubricants, I know the issues. I don't know the solutions, but that's why I'm going to work every day, to try to get closer and closer and closer. That's his goal.
So now, you've known François Paul since the 1980s, and obviously it's been a long and fruitful friendship and business relationship. My boss, Danny Govberg, is perhaps more enamored of Montre Journe, its products past and present, than anything else. I don't think he speaks as glowingly about family members. But the bottom line is, I would love to know, I know how I met him. How did you meet him?
But Danny, I met him long time ago in Geneva. We were invited by Frank Muller to attend like a meeting, and what I really liked about Danny, how can I say that in the proper way? He says it the way it is, and if you're not happy about this, sorry, this is the reality. And I remember, everybody was like, oh, the Swiss people, everything is nice. I said, no, sorry, I have this problem, this problem, this problem, in front of everyone. People said, yeah, we also have the same problem, and we're not going to go dwell into the side of this industry. And Danny has always, it's not always easy to follow him, as you know, because he's got 1,000 ideas a second, and you're trying to catch up.
At the same time?
At the same time. And then you have to sort them out and say, what do I do with this information? But he's pushing. He's not resting. He's not saying, oh, everything is fine, whatever, I can retire. No, the guy is pushing. I mean, the fact that you have a studio here, who has done that recently as a retailer? No one. I'm not talking about all the other things. But what I like about Danny is he's been able to delegate to young people like you, like George, like Brian, I mean his son, but like to say, listen, take it. Do your mistakes you're going to do, but take it. And these guys, because they're empowered, they have responsibilities. Because they have responsibilities, they have to know more than the next guy. And they know more than the next guy, and they also have the passion. If you do a job just because you need to clock in the morning, it's boring as hell. And then these guys, I see that they're having fun. When you're having fun, you're having fun.
I got a book of cars on the table. We're talking about watches.
We
This
should
is
say
great.
that to Danny, but maybe you should have paid him to do this, instead of the reverse.
Cut.
But this is how Danny is. He's not always saying, it's my idea, it's my idea. He doesn't care about this. So he doesn't have an ego on this. He has a vision, and the vision changes, but he's always like, what's next? Forget about today, that's done. Even though we're scrambling to try to catch up with him, he's already on the next 2 or 3 or 5 ideas, if it's not more. So when Danny and I talked, actually it was in Naples, Florida, we had a long discussion, and I told him, I said, listen, first, you don't know niche, and we are, the biggest of the small guys. That's maybe a definition for us. So you're never going to get rich with us, because I'm never going to give you 50 watches or 100 watches. I won't have them. I can say, yes, you can have them. You'll never get them. And it was difficult for Danny and I to understand each other. I said, well, what's my future with Journe? I said, I don't know. You're the one coming to ask me. He said, now, do you have collectors that could be interested in this? And then you can use this as also the prestige. You are now part of the history of Journe, because the money that Danny sent me, I sent it to François Paul right away. It's part of the company. So basically, it changes, and I work for other companies where the bottom line was the only thing. If you give me $10, and you know that this $10 is going to go to François Paul, not his back pocket, but the company, I profit from it. Danny profits from this. Everybody profits from this. You're part of an adventure. And that's a big difference with other companies, and I'm not saying the other companies are wrong, it's just different.
And I think that's a big attraction to Danny, and it's a big attraction to all of us here at Watchbox and Goffberg, just because, frankly, it's a more personal relationship that we've had with Montre Journe. I've been to Switzerland, I've been out with your team, I've met François Paul, I've gotten a sense of his own personal philosophy, listening through my own broken knowledge of French to his own words and his thoughts, and that just doesn't happen with a major group. You don't get that experience, so I've definitely had a personal, firsthand, run through of what this relationship with the company means, and I think Danny has kind of introduced me to it from his own experience with yourself and François Paul over the years. So, in any case, one thing I think we both, by all means.
Well, let's be realistic. He's arguably the best watchmaker alive. I'm not saying this with the prices that he won and the integrity that he has.
The track record is there.
Exactly. So now, you have the chance, if you know watches, or if you want to know about watches, to meet the guy. And he'll be in jeans, and maybe he's like, his working clothes, whatever. And I remember we were in Dallas in 2006, and there's a doctor that said, I don't understand why you did the remontoir d'égalité like this. And he went like this, and none in the organ would say, well, because you don't know anything about watchmaking, but you know what? I'm going to show you. He took a piece of paper, a pen, and he redrew the whole remontoir d'égalité and said, do you understand why I have to do it this way rather than that way? Because that I wouldn't go anywhere. I have to go this way. And the guy said, absolutely. The guy said, can I keep a piece of paper? And he said, absolutely. Can you sign this? Whatever, I don't care. I signed it. It's patented, so I'm not revealing more secrets than the patent. The guy is here. And is very approachable if you're passionate about watches. If you say, how much money I'm going to make out of you, you lost him. He doesn't even understand what you're talking about. But I remember in 2006 again, it was the first time we did the US tour. We were at Cellini in New York, and there's a guy that was calling me. I said, I want to meet Mr. Journe because I've learned about this and I've learned about that. Can I meet him? I said, of course, come to Cellini and I'll introduce you to him. So he finally comes. I said, I'm so-and-so. Can I meet Mr. Journe? I said, yeah, he's busy right now. But what's the rush? I said, well, this is my birthday present for my girlfriend. I come from Tampa. And I don't have the money to spend, the night in New York, so I'm catching another plane later, so I'm on a time constraint. So obviously the guy was not the buyer. He spent 45 minutes with François Paul because the guy knew everything about François Paul, and they had a lot of interaction. Unfortunately, I had to translate everything because there was no French or English on both parts. That's François Paul. The guy was passionate. François Paul respects the passion because he's passionate. Wherever you go talk about the business, is like not that interesting.
No, but I can completely understand that, having worked for someone who is immensely passionate about what he does and whose personality kind of pervades every part of the organization and the folks who work there. I think you and I both understand what it's like to have a boss who's always on and always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Right, right.
Well, thank you so much, Pierre, for being here.
Thank you.
For sharing your insights. I'm Tim, he's Pierre, this is Watchbox, and thanks for logging on.
Thank you.